on the backlash and the White House response. Let's bring in Joel Rubin, National Security and Government Affairs expert. Boy, Joel, where do I even begin? Clearly, we're getting a sense that the White House is shifting its tone as well as its strategy. Is this a real policy change or just damage control at this point?
Yeah, well, Asieh, the White House can read the polls just like anybody reading the newspaper can see it. And this policy is tanking. The American people hate it across the board. And while I think the president's trying to soften the tone a little bit, I don't view this as serious or a real policy change. If there were a real policy change, we would see proposals. We would see the firing of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, and we would see ICE taken out of the field and sent back out without masks, with clear rules of the road, and with targets to arrest rather than just going around and arresting anyone that they don't like. So not much of a change, a little calmer for the moment. But Donald Trump's, and I think the president and the White House, just trying to lick their wounds because they know how badly this policy is hurting them.
So Border Patrol's Greg Bovino, as Walter reported, appears to be on his way out. You may remember he was the one who had defended his agents in the wake of Alex Pretty's shooting, argued the immigration officers were the true victims here. So if Bovino is on his way out, could perhaps Kristi Noem be next?
Yeah, this is what we call a sacrificial lamb. I think that the president, he wants to try to blame anyone for the disaster that's unfolding in Minnesota and across the country, when really the blame should be with him and with the White House. So firing Bovino, who really should apologize to the American people and to the family of the victims of Mr. Pretty, and in particular for smearing his good name, calling him a domestic terrorist based upon nothing. These need to be rectified. And I think Kristi Noem, we're now seeing calls in Congress for her to be fired. We're seeing calls for her impeachment. This is going to be, politically speaking, a very powerful argument for Democrats heading into the fall as well. And so I think the president, he loses politically every day she stays on the job.
And I think, Joel, the sad and interesting part of this, these tragic killings, is that it's not just Democrats who have expressed outrage. Republicans in Congress have as well.
Yeah, look, Asieh, this cuts across all party lines, what we're all witnessing here. And that's why I think you see the poll numbers tanking because, for example, the gentleman who was killed over the weekend, Mr. Pretty, he was legally carrying a weapon, but was described as a terrorist who should not have a weapon. And so for President Trump's base in the Republican Party, many of them for years have been advocating that someone should be allowed to legally carry a weapon, even to a protest. So now they're all up in arms. And we should not see people shot dead by American government agents, certainly not when they're disarmed and held to the ground and shot 10 times at point blank range. And that's an image that won't get out of the minds of the American people. And that symbolizes the catastrophe of this ICE policy.
I want to ask you a question about Pam Bondi. But before I do, I got to ask you a little bit more about Tom Homan, who's now overseeing this operation in Minneapolis. Can we expect anything drastically or radically different moving forward when it comes to what we've seen with ICE and Border Patrol operations in Minneapolis?
I don't believe we will. And that's because, for example, Tom Homan is the architect of this policy. Now, he is more politic. He is able to communicate in a manner where he's not apologizing for smearing dead Americans like the people we've described, and Greg Bovino in particular, and Kristi Noem. But he wants this policy. And let's remember, stepping back, Asieh, this has been a policy that for decades Republicans have been calling for, to have American government officials and law enforcement go door to door and pull out what they describe as illegal immigrants and kick them out of the country. And nobody wanted to do it. Now they're doing it. Tom Homan is the guy, the architect of this. And this is what it looks like. And that's why it's incredibly unpopular. And until he changes the policy, and I don't believe he will, we're going to continue to see the same problems that we've been seeing.
Okay, so let me move on to Pam Bondi. Attorney General sent a letter to Governor Walz of Minnesota, apparently outlining what she described as three simple steps to bring back law and order and end chaos. And one of those steps is demanding that Minnesota hand over sensitive voter registration records to the federal government. How does turning over voter data and chaos in Minneapolis?
Well, there's an easy way to describe this. It's called political extortion. The American government at the federal level does not have the right to control the voter files of states. Those are controlled by the states, the Secretary of State, who manages the elections in each individual state. And so for the federal government to invasively demand that implies that they are looking to strip people out of the voter rolls. That's been a big problem as well related to their discussion about Minnesota. They believe and argue that there are many illegal votes, even though there's been no proof of fraud. And so to conflate the two and to put physical pressure on the people of Minnesota through Asieh to say, we'll take that away if you give us the voter rolls that we're not entitled to have, that's just extortionary tactics that will not fly in court. And it's really quite a gross abuse of the power of our Justice Department.
All right, Joel, we're going to have to leave it there. Joel Rubin, as always, thank you.